Welcome back to our reading series on CAEL Live. Today we're going to continue looking at a long reading passage from a past CAEL test, so we can practice answering some test questions together. So over the past weeks, we've developed a really nice routine of previewing the page before we start the test question, so that we know exactly what it is we're looking for. So we recognize quickly here that we are dealing with part 4 on the CAEL test, which is the long reading section. We also notice that we've got 19 minutes to complete this entire section of the test. And we also have 5 pages of questions to answer. Now on this part of the CAEL test, you'll have around 11 questions to answer. The length of the article is a good idea to notice as well. So you would scroll down using this bar in the center of the screen to see exactly how long the text is. So right now we are looking at the first 2.5 paragraphs of this long text. The text itself is 9 paragraphs long for this question, and that's about average for the length of the long reading passages on CAEL. So once you've previewed your page, and that should not take you more than 5 or 6 seconds really, it's done quickly. We then go back to the text and have a quick skim. We want to understand the gist of the article. We won't have time to read every word carefully and slowly, so we just want to see what the text is about. So this one happens to have headings, so that's a really nice place to start. So we notice right away that this text is talking about the Achaemenid Empire. And it's also wise to have a quick skim of the first sentence in each paragraph to, again, just gather more information about the general main idea. So this has something to do with history. I'll be reading about an historical account. The second heading I noticed is Origins of the Empire, and I quickly noticed that I'm dealing with the First Persian Empire. And we would continue to have a quick look at the other headings and the first sentence of each paragraph until we get to the bottom. So that skimming process should not take more than 15 seconds. So in total now, you've spent about 30 seconds or so skim reading this text. So we are going to focus most of our time, of course, answering the questions on the test. And for today's episode, we're going to focus on question number 4, which is on page 2 in the tab above there. So right before we begin, of course, we always have to understand exactly what it is we're trying to find to answer this question correctly. So the best way to do that is to look at the question itself and identify the key word or words. These would be the most important words in the question. They're the words that you're going to then find in the text in order to locate the answer. So quickly looking at question 4, I select Ionia as a really important keyword. Ionia starts with a capital letter I, so I'm identifying this as a place. So if I can find Ionia in my text, I should be able to locate my answer. Now the question itself is telling me to match up the following descriptions with Ionia. So those descriptions are here. They are the 5 answer choices. Now you'll notice as well that there are square bullets instead of round like we're accustomed to seeing. So when you notice square bullets on a CAEL test, it's a clue to you that more than one answer choice is going to be correct. And the question itself is always going to tell you how many answers you should select. In this case, we are told to select 3. So please read those instructions carefully. We would need all 3 answer choices to be correct here in order to get the point for this question. So now we're ready to start scanning. So this means we look back at the text, our eyes will fall quickly over the page. We're not reading the words, we are only looking for the word Ionia. And remember, it starts with a capital letter I, so sometimes that helps locate the word a little more quickly. So I do not see Ionia on this screen, so you would use the little scroll bar in the middle to move the screen down. So here's the next section of text. And as I keep scanning, I finally find it right down here. So the word Ionia is in the 5th paragraph of this text. So that means then if I look at this specific paragraph, I'm hoping to have enough information to select 3 answer choices here that relate back to Ionia itself. This is a good time, I think, to actually read over the answer choices so that I know what I'm supposed to look for in the text. So answer choice A, we'll call it, that's the first one, says a conquered territory. B is a trigger of consequential invasion. Then we have a province inhabited by Persians, an example of political differences, and a source of ancient culture. So 3 of those 5 answer choices I should be able to find in my paragraph here where I've indicated. So looking at that paragraph in the text, I start skim reading it, and very quickly I identify the word conquered right there in the first line, and I match that back to the word conquered in my first answer choice. So I've created a direct match. Word for word, these 2 words are the same. So I think answer A is probably correct, but before I select it, I'd better go back to the text and just read that sentence where I found the word conquered to make sure the idea matches. Remember, I'm trying to find a phrase that relates to Ionia. So in the text, I read that Cyrus conquered the Greek territories of Ionia. So clearly then, the descriptive phrase, a conquered territory, relates to Ionia itself. So I've made quick work of this question. I've already found 1 of the 3 correct descriptive phrases. So I'm going to continue now. I've got 2 more answers to find from the remaining 4 on the test. So going back to the text where I just left off, I'm going to continue to skim read and to find more information that will hopefully match back to some of those answer choices. Now I'm going to highlight on the screen right now some of the main words or the key words that are jumping out at me. On the real CAEL test, you will not be able to highlight on the computer screen itself. That's not yet a feature that's available. Instead, you'll be given a pen and paper and you'll be able to make your own notes. But for study purposes today, I thought it was a good idea to highlight on the screen so we could all see together which words we're looking at. So I read something here about future conflicts, and I guess the Greco-Persian War would be an example of those conflicts. So I've highlighted them yellow for us to follow. And you know what? The word conflict, I remember, matches up with this word invasion over here in my answer choices. Now, the word conflict and the word invasion, to me, those are synonyms. They mean pretty much the same thing. So once again, I'm pretty certain this is going to be another of the correct answers. But before I select it, I'd best go back to the text, just read that sentence through and double check that the meanings match up. So what I'm reading in the text is that the conquest, now the conquest is the conquering of Ionia. That was phrased in the sentence above it. So the conquering of Ionia, it says, would lead to future conflicts like the Greco-Persian War. So if conquering Ionia led to the conflict, that's another way of saying it triggered invasions. So once again, these are paraphrased ideas. So ideas that mean the same thing, but they're expressed in different words. And if I really wanted to dive deep into these keywords, looking at this answer choice, I noticed this complex word, consequential. Now, a consequence would be a negative result to something. So when I reason back to what I just read in the text, I would argue strongly that a war is a great example of a negative result of this invasion. So I've matched pretty much all of the keywords from that answer choice back to the text. So I can very confidently say that answer B, a trigger of consequential invasion, certainly relates back to Ionia. So I have found 2 answer choices. I only need 3, so I'm looking for 1 more. One of these 3 remaining choices is going to be correct. So returning back to where I just left off in the text, I'll continue to skim read, looking for more ideas. And I'm reading about how Persians were tolerant, and then I see something about governmental control. And I'm going to pause there because the word government connects back to the word political in these answer choices. These 2 words are synonyms again. So again, I'm pretty certain this is going to be my 3rd answer choice for this question, but I'd best double check it before I click that on the test. So returning back, I guess, to the text, I know I have to find an example of a political difference. That's the focus of this answer choice. So looking at the text itself, when I continue to skim read where I left off at the highlighted part, I noticed this transitional phrase, I see on the other hand. And I know that in English, we use this phrase often when we are introducing some sort of an opposing or opposite idea. So that's connecting into that notion of having a difference in political ideas. So I think I'm on the right track. If I have the time on the test, I'm going to first look above the word on the other hand to see what that first idea was. So this part of the structure talks about the Persians, and relating to the government ideas, they had something called vertical government control. I don't know exactly what that means from a political standpoint, but I'm going to note the terminology for a moment. When I keep reading, I see the Greeks are the other group of people that this structure is talking about. And it says something about, okay, right there, with their government or political ideas, they have something called a horizontal structure. So again, I don't fully understand the politics of this question. I don't know what vertical government control or horizontal structure looks like in a political mindset, but I do understand language, and I know that vertical and horizontal are opposite ideas, right? Vertical means to go up and down. Horizontal means to go across. So if I just think of it from a language standpoint, those would be opposite or different ideals. So using that type of rationale, I'm going to confidently select this answer on the test. So I now have 3 answer choices selected, and that's what my question asked me to do. So I would be almost ready to move on to the next question. Now, again, this question is asking you to find 3 answers, so you will likely need more time to complete it as compared to the other questions that are just multiple choice with 1 answer. So all in all, I would suggest a question like this, you could afford about 2 minutes to spend on it and still have time to finish the rest of the test for this section. All right, if you do have extra time at the end, or if you find your 3 answer choices quickly, you might even want to consider the other answer choices that you haven't selected. I always like to read them through and just eliminate them so that I know I've selected wisely. So this 3rd answer choice talked about a province inhabited by Persians. So going back to the text we've been examining, I didn't read anything about a province where Persians lived. As a matter of fact, right in the opening line, Ionia is identified as a territory. So using that rationale, I would eliminate that from my answer choices. It's not a province at all. That's how I would approach that one. And last but not least, I didn't select a source of ancient culture. And you know, I'm feeling confident about that. I know in the text, I noticed the word culture somewhere. Let's see where, there it is, okay? But when I look back at the idea presented in the text, it just tells me that Persians were tolerant of other cultures. And to me, that's not a strong enough connection to indicate that Ionia was a source of ancient culture. So I'm also confident going to eliminate that answer too. So you've got 3 answer choices selected. That's what the test question was asking you to do. I would say we double checked it thoroughly and would certainly be ready to move on to the other questions to complete this section. So just to wrap up the strategies that we've used to complete this part of the test, we're always going to preview the page. So it's really important to have a time management strategy. Figure out how many minutes you've got, how long that text is to skim read, and then how many questions there are. We need to finish answering all questions before the timer hits 0. So that's an important first step. And then when we take even say 10 or 15 seconds just to skim the text, just to understand what it's about and how it's organized, that might help us actually locate information later. So this text had headings, and that pointed us right away to understanding that this would be a text about history. And then we had a quick look at the first sentence of each paragraph too, just to get the gist of the piece. You're spending most of your time here on the questions. So we identified the keyword Ionia in this particular test question. And then we returned to the text and scanned the text only for that one word Ionia in this case. Note that in other test questions, you might be looking for synonyms or paraphrased ideas. And we actually did that when we looked at the answer choices. So sometimes we found direct matches between the text and the question and answer choices. Sometimes though, we found synonyms or paraphrased ideas. So be very mindful of that. You'll encounter all 3 on the CAEL test. Once you've located those keywords in the text, it's nice to read the whole sentence or even the section where that keyword is located. So we focused on that entire paragraph today in order to answer the 3 answer choices that related to Ionia. So in a process of going back and forth to match up ideas, we were able to select the 3 answers in this particular case. So remember then, on some test questions for CAEL, there will be multiple answers that are correct. So you should notice those square bullets telling you as a clue that more than one answer will be correct. And again, the test instructions will tell you how many answers you need to choose. So please read that very carefully so that you have the point for that question. And again, if you've got the extra time, or if you're really unsure about the answer choices themselves, you can always eliminate other answers that don't make sense. And that will usually leave you feeling more confident that the answers you have selected are correct. Next week, we're going to continue using this text, but we will of course answer a different question from that CAEL test. Join me then for some more practice.